Welcome to AI Scholar. Today, we're going to break down the super complex world of artificial intelligence. We'll map out the key companies that are literally building it from the ground up, from the sand to the smarts.
When you type a question into ChatGPT, have you ever stopped to think about what's happening behind the scenes? It's so much more than just clever code. It's a gigantic industrial supply chain, a whole ecosystem, really. So let's dive in and unpack this. Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to move up the stack layer by layer, starting with mapping the whole universe, then looking at the chip builders, the computing providers, the model builders, and finally, the big takeaway. It'll all make sense how it connects.
Right, so let's start with the 30,000-foot view. The best way to think about the AI industry is like a pyramid, or what people in tech call a stack. Every single layer completely depends on the one right below it. You can't have the top without the bottom.
Okay, first up, let's talk about our first layer. We're at the very bottom of that pyramid, the absolute bedrock. This is where the physical hardware, the silicon brains of AI, gets made. Now, these are not your average computer chips, not the kind you'd find in your laptop. No. These are hyper-specialized processors, absolute beasts designed for the insane amount of calculations that AI demands. And when you talk about AI chips, well, there's one name that just towers over everyone else: NVIDIA. And look at this. The sheer scale of their dominance is just staggering. They design the chips that are used in over 90% of the market. A huge reason for this is their powerful CUDA software, which has basically locked developers into their ecosystem for years. It's brilliant, really.
And all that market dominance, well, it has had a pretty massive financial impact. NVIDIA recently became the first chip maker in history to hit a mind-boggling multi-trillion-dollar valuation. That number alone tells you just how critical they are to this whole revolution.
Of course, NVIDIA isn't totally alone down here. You got companies like AMD, their main competitor, and they're starting to gain some serious ground. And then there are these incredible specialists like TSMC, who actually manufacture almost all of the world's advanced chips. And they do it using one-of-a-kind machines made by another company, ASML. It's its own little ecosystem. So you've got all these super powerful chips. But where do they live? Where do they do their work? Well, that's where the next layer of our AI stack comes into play. These are the cloud giants. Think massive, football field-sized data centers packed with all that hardware. What they do is basically rent out all of that supercomputing power to anyone who needs it. And the key players here are the tech titans, Microsoft and Amazon. Microsoft is a huge force with its Azure cloud business and its massive investment in OpenAI. On the other side, you've got Amazon. Their AWS service is the computing backbone for thousands of companies. Plus, they're making their own chips and investing a ton in another model builder called Anthropic. So you can see they're both using their cloud power to get a giant piece of the AI pie. What's fascinating is that even older legacy companies are being completely reborn in this era. Take Oracle. They are now an absolutely crucial partner, building out the giant data centers needed for OpenAI's biggest, most ambitious projects. But there is one company in this layer that kind of breaks the mold. It doesn't just play in one part of the stack, it operates across the whole thing. And that company is Google. I mean, they're totally unique. They design their own custom hardware down in the foundation. They provide the cloud infrastructure in the engine room. And they build their own top-tier AI models like Gemini at the very top. This full-stack approach gives them an unbelievable amount of influence over the entire ecosystem. All right, let's climb to the top of the pyramid. This is where it gets really interesting for most of us. We're talking about the companies that actually create the AI minds. So these are the folks who take all those chips and all that data center power and use it to train these huge foundational AI models. You can think of them as these versatile base brains, kind of like GPT-4 or Claude 3, that can then be fine-tuned to power all sorts of different apps and products. The most famous one, of course, is OpenAI. They're the ones who really lit the fuse and launched AI into the mainstream with ChatGPT. They changed everything. And their impact is just obvious when you look at their valuation, which has skyrocketed into the tens of billions of dollars. And that's because they just keep creating these cutting-edge models that have totally captured the world's imagination. But hey, this field is getting crowded with some other heavy hitters. You've got the social media giant Meta, which has poured billions into its Llama models. You have Anthropic, which has carved out a niche by focusing on AI safety. And then, of course, you've got xAI, Elon Musk's new venture behind the Grok model. So There we have it. We've built our AI stack all the way from the silicon up to the intelligence. Let's just take a moment and summarize what this all means.
And here it is, the whole ecosystem in one simple view. Now, what's so critical to get is that this is not just a list of companies. It is a deeply, deeply interconnected supply chain. The model builders at the top, like OpenAI, they literally cannot exist without the computing power from companies like Microsoft, who in turn are completely dependent on the specialized chips from foundation players like NVIDIA. If there's a bottleneck in one layer, everybody feels it.
And that really brings us to a final and maybe the most important question. As a small handful of powerful companies builds the foundation of our intelligent future, who actually gets to decide what that future is going to look like? If you found this video informative and entertaining, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to AI Scholar for more such videos. See you in the next one.